that will give a hint. Have you ever met someone and you're in love and you know it doesn't matter where you go, what you do, you just have to be with that person?
In today's world, the story of Dolores Hart is still widely discussed because it feels almost unreal compared to modern celebrity culture. Most actors today work very hard to enter Hollywood and stay there for as long as possible, often chasing fame, money, and recognition. But Dolores Hart did the opposite at a time when she had already achieved success. This is why her decision continues to surprise new generations who learn about her life through documentaries, articles, and interviews. Her journey is often described as a turning point story, where a person leaves one world completely and enters another with a totally different purpose. What makes it even more interesting is that she did not leave because of failure or lack of opportunity. She was rising in her career, gaining attention and receiving strong roles in films. Yet, she still felt that something important was missing in her life. This feeling is something many people can relate to in different ways, even if their lives are far from Hollywood. Her story becomes less about acting and more about human emotion, inner conflict, and the search for meaning. It shows that success on the outside does not always match happiness on the inside. Because of this, her life is often used in discussions about personal choice and spiritual calling. People continue to ask whether she made the right decision, but she herself has consistently expressed peace with her path. This balance between public curiosity and personal certainty is what keeps her story alive even after so many decades. To understand her decision more deeply, it is important to look at the emotional and spiritual journey she experienced before leaving Hollywood. During her acting years, Dolores Hart was not only focused on performance, but also on understanding herself and her place in the world. Even though she enjoyed acting and appreciated the opportunities she received, she also spent time reflecting on deeper questions about life. These questions were not unusual for someone young and thoughtful, but in her case, they became more intense as her fame increased. While many people assume that fame automatically brings happiness, her experience showed a different reality. Being constantly in the public eye, having a busy schedule, and living under expectations can create emotional pressure. She began to feel that her life was moving in two directions at once. One part her enjoying success, and another part searching for something quieter and more meaningful. This inner tension gradually became stronger. She was not rejecting acting itself, but she was questioning whether it was the center of her life's purpose. This kind of reflection eventually led her to explore religious life more seriously. The idea of joining a monastery was not something she decided overnight. It developed slowly through thought, prayer, and personal experience. Over time, she felt that a life dedicated to faith and simplicity matched her inner feelings more closely than the fast-paced world of Hollywood. This process shows that major life decisions are often the result of long emotional journeys rather than sudden moments. When she finally left Hollywood and entered the Benedictine monastery, the change in her daily life was extreme and immediate. She moved from a world filled with cameras, scripts, and public attention to a life centered on silence, prayer, and routine. This kind of transition is difficult for anyone, especially someone who had experienced fame at a young age. The monastery life required discipline, patience, and emotional adjustment. Instead of film sets and interviews, her days became structured around prayer services, work within the community, and time for reflection. At first, this shift may have felt unfamiliar, but over time she adapted to it and found comfort in its simplicity. One important aspect of her new life was a sense of stability it provided. In Hollywood, schedules can change quickly, and success can be unpredictable. In contrast, monastic life is steady and grounded in tradition. For Dolores Hart, this stability became a source of peace. She also discovered that her creative abilities did not disappear. They simply changed form. She participated in artistic and community activities within the monastery, which allowed her to continue expressing creativity in a different environment. This shows that leaving a career does not always mean leaving one's identity behind completely. Instead, it can mean reshaping that identity in a new direction. Her experience challenges the idea that a person must stay in one path forever. It suggests that change, even dramatic change, can sometimes lead to a deeper sense of balance and understanding. As time passed, Dolores Hart gradually took on more responsibility within the monastery community, eventually becoming a respected leader. This part of her journey is important because it shows that her decision was not an escape from life, but a step into a different kind of leadership and service. Many people assume that leaving fame means withdrawing from importance, but in her case, she continued to play a meaningful role in the lives of others. Within the monastery, she contributed to decision-making, guided younger members, and helped maintain the spiritual and organizational structure of the community. This responsibility required maturity, patience, and strong emotional strength. It also showed that her personality was not defined only by acting or Hollywood success. She had the ability to lead, support, and inspire in a completely different environment. Over the years, she became known not for films or celebrity appearances, but for her dedication and stability within the religious community. Even though she remained away from public life, her story slowly reached audiences again through interviews and documentaries. These appearances helped people understand that her choice was not about rejecting the world, but about choosing a different kind of service. Many viewers find this part of her life especially meaningful because it challenges common ideas about achievement. It shows that influence and importance are not always connected to fame or media attention. Instead, they can exist quietly in places that most people never see. Her leadership within the monastery adds depth to her story and helps explain why her decision was not temporary, but lifelong. Even today, the life of Dolores Hart continues to inspire curiosity and discussion because it represents a rare kind of life journey that does not follow the usual pattern of celebrity culture. In most Hollywood stories, people either stay in the industry or leave and later return in some form. Her story is different because it shows complete commitment to a new path without turning back. This consistency makes her life stand out in entertainment history. It also raises important questions about how people define success. For some, success means fame and wealth. For others, it means peace, purpose, and inner clarity. Dolores Hart's life suggests that these definitions are personal and cannot be judged by a single standard. She has often been seen as someone who made a very brave decision, even if it was misunderstood at first. Over time, public perception of her choice has shifted from shock to respect. Many people now view her not as someone who left Hollywood, but as someone who chose a different kind of meaningful life. Her early films remain part of cinematic history, but her later life gives those films a deeper context. It shows that behind every public figure is a private human being making complex choices. Her story continues to be shared because it speaks to universal themes: purpose, identity, and the search for peace. In a fast-moving world, her life remains a reminder that slowing down and choosing a different direction is sometimes the most powerful decision a person can make. The story of Dolores Hart also stands out because it challenges a common idea that leaving fame means losing relevance or importance. In most celebrity careers, visibility is everything. The more films an actor does, the more public appearances they make, the more they are remembered. But Dolores Hart's life followed a very different path. After leaving Hollywood in the early 1960s, she had not tried to stay connected to the entertainment industry in any active way for fame or attention. Instead, she built a life that was intentionally private, structured, and focused on spiritual practice. Over time, this choice created a unique kind of legacy. She became known not only for her early acting roles, but also for the courage it took to step away from a rising career. This dual identity, actress and nun, makes her story especially memorable. It is rare for one person to be strongly associated with two completely different worlds. In Hollywood history, her name is often mentioned in discussions about actors who left the industry at their peak. However, unlike many short-term departures, her decision was permanent and consistent throughout her life. This long-term commitment gives her story a sense of depth and seriousness. It is not just a moment of change, but a lifelong example of following a chosen path. Even people who do not share her religious beliefs often find her journey interesting because it reflects a universal human experience: the need to choose between different directions in life. Her story suggests that it is possible to redefine success at any stage, even when everything appears stable on the outside. This message is part of why her life continues to be shared widely in modern media and discussions about purpose. Another important part of her journey is how she managed the emotional transition from public recognition to private life. For many actors, fame becomes part of identity, and stepping away from it can be psychologically difficult. In the case of Dolores Hart, the shift was not just about changing jobs. It was about changing how she saw herself and how others saw her. When she entered the Benedictine monastery, she left behind not only her career, but also the constant attention that comes with being a public figure. This meant no interviews, no red carpet events, and no regular interaction with the entertainment world. At first, such a change can feel like isolation, especially for someone who had experienced public admiration. However, over time, she adapted to the quiet rhythm of monastic life. Instead of measuring her days by popularity or professional success, she began to measure them through reflection, service, and spiritual growth. This shift in mindset is important because it shows that identity is not fixed. A person can move from one way of life to another and still find stability. Her experience also highlights how different environments shape human behavior. Hollywood encourages visibility and performance, while monastic life encourages silence and inner focus. Moving between these two worlds requires emotional strength and clarity of purpose. Dolores Hart's ability to adjust suggests that her decision was deeply considered rather than impulsive. It also shows that peace is often found not in external achievement, but in internal alignment. Her journey continues to be studied by people interested in psychology, spirituality, and human behavior because it demonstrates how identity can evolve over time. Over the years, the influence of Dolores Hart has expanded beyond her personal life story and become part of broader cultural discussions. Documentaries, interviews, and articles have brought her story back into public awareness, especially among younger audiences who may not be familiar with her early films. One reason her story continues to attract attention is that it goes against expectations. In modern culture, people often assume that success should be maintained and expanded. Leaving a successful career is usually seen as unusual or even risky. However, her life shows that success can also mean choosing a different direction entirely. This idea is powerful because it encourages people to think differently about their own goals and priorities. Her story is often used in conversations about burnout, life purpose, and personal transformation. It raises questions such as, what makes a life meaningful? Is it fame or is it peace of mind? Can someone change their identity completely and still feel fulfilled? These questions do not have simple answers, but her life provides a real example that helps people explore them. These two identities may seem completely separate, but together they form one continuous life story. This combination is what makes her biography so compelling to audiences around the world. It shows that people can move between very different life paths and still find coherence and meaning. Her journey also raises deeper reflections about how society defines success. For some, success is measured in awards, popularity, and financial gain. For others, it is measured in peace, clarity, and inner satisfaction. Her life does not reject one definition in favor of another. Instead, it shows that different values can lead to different but equally valid life choices. Over time, her story has become more than just a Hollywood curiosity. It has become an example of personal authenticity and long-term commitment to belief. Even though she no longer appears in films or public entertainment spaces, her story continues to be told because it touches on universal human questions. In that sense, her legacy is not limited to her acting career or her religious role, but extends into the ongoing conversation about what it means to live a meaningful life in a changing world. Be why the stage in the life of Dolores Hart. Her story has already moved far beyond the boundaries of Hollywood history and entered a wider discussion about purpose, identity, and long-term fulfillment. What makes her journey especially powerful is that it does not depend on a dramatic comeback, scandal, or return to fame. Instead, it is built on steady commitment to a completely different way of life. In many celebrity stories, the most attention comes from dramatic ups and downs, but in her case, the most striking element is consistency. She made a life-changing decision at a young age and continued to live by it for decades without reversing course. This kind of stability is rare in public life and is one of the reasons her story continues to attract filmmakers, writers, and audiences. It also gives her biography a sense of clarity that is often missing in fame-related narratives. There is no confusion about her direction after 1963. Instead, there is a clear shift from one world to another. This makes her life story easy to follow, but deeply thought-provoking at the same time. It encourages people to think about how decisions made early in life can shape an entire future. In a broader sense, her story becomes less about Hollywood itself and more about the human search for meaning beyond external success. As the years passed, the public image of Dolores Hart continued to evolve, especially as new generations discovered her story through documentaries and interviews. People who were not even born during her Hollywood career came to know her first as a nun rather than an actress, which is an interesting reversal of her original identity. This shift shows how legacy changes over time, depending on which part of a person's life is highlighted. For some, she is remembered for her early films and her work with major actors of her era. For others, she is known as a spiritual figure who left fame for a life of faith. Both versions are true, yet each tells a different story depending on perspective. This dual recognition is part of what keeps her story relevant in modern times. It allows different audiences to connect with her life for different reasons: film history, personal inspiration, or spiritual reflection. Her story is often shared in educational and reflective contexts because it does not fit neatly into a single category. It is not just entertainment history, and it is not only religious biography. It is a blend of both. This complexity makes it more interesting than a simple success story or failure story. It reflects the reality that human lives are often layered and cannot be reduced to one identity. Within her monastic life, the experience of Dolores Hart continued to reflect the values of stability, service, and inner reflection. Over time, she became a senior figure in her religious community, which brought additional